Would you like to increase your dental practice revenue immediately? Maybe you have a need to maximize efficiencies and create your dream team. Angela Mulrooney believes that when you focus on communication with your customers and create consistency in your practice, you will increase your revenue and reduce your working hours. Angela Mulrooney is the business doctor, and today she is my guest expert. Welcome to Practice Management Nuggets Podcast. Practical practice management and privacy tips to help you start, grow, and improve your healthcare practice. If you are a clinic manager, team lead, healthcare provider, or practice owner, these practical tips will save you time and money. My name is Jean Eaton, your practice management mentor and your practical privacy coach with Information Managers. I help you manage the pink elephant in the room. Let's get started. Good morning. This is Jean Eaton, your practical privacy coach and practice management mentor with Information Managers. And thank you for joining us for the Practice Management Nuggets podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to have Angela Mulrooney as our guest today for Practice Management Nuggets. Dr. Angela Mulrooney is published author, a retired dentist, and a dental practice coach who resides in Calgary. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's just after our long weekend. So we're back to our practices, and I'm excited to talk with you about dental practice coaching. You've been doing dental practice coaching, or you've been a dentist for some time. Tell me a little bit about your background.
So, Jean, I was a dentist. I graduated in 2004, so I've been around the block a few times now. In 2009, I decided to buy a practice in the worst part of town in Calgary, and I had this dream of what I wanted to turn it into. And what I bought was a very broken down bread and butter practice from a 78-year-old dentist. I was 28 at the time. And my dream was to be able to turn it into a high-end, high-tech practice and go from being a children's dentist, which is what I had done the first few years of being an associate, to becoming an adult-based dentist, being able to do sleep apnea, IV station, full mouth reconstruction, implants, all the big tools that a lot of the people that I admired were doing in their practice. I wanted to have those tools in my tool belt in order to help patients as well. So everyone thought that the decks were stacked against me and that it wouldn't be possible to do it in the location that I had bought. And I found a way, did a lot of studying, figured out how I could actually take that practice and turn it into exactly what I wanted and achieve my dream in dentistry.
It sounds like you have some very clear goals about what you wanted to accomplish.
After about a year in, yes, I did. It was funny because I had this beautiful business plan when I bought the practice, and then just like most entrepreneurs, once you get into the business, you've got these rose-colored glasses on and you're just like running on adrenaline and hope for that first year. And sometimes you lose focus on what the purpose was for that practice. And I reached a turning point where I had to make a decision to get clear, otherwise I was going to be in trouble. So once I had that turning point, I got very focused on how I was going to make my practice run the way that I wanted, started focusing on getting coaches, started focusing on going to business training and getting all the tools that I needed to actually enable myself to achieve the skills that I wanted in my practice.
Okay, so you have some experience about bringing up a practice and how to improve that practice. How has that affected what you're doing now as a dental coach?
Honestly, I went through worst case scenario with everything with my practice, including the owner dying halfway through the deal to me losing my ability to practice when I developed focal dystonia in 2013. So pretty much it was awful going through it, but in the end, it gave me a lot of experiences that most dentists maybe will experience one or two big tragedies in their career. And I experienced quite a myriad of them, which has prepared me to be able to help people with what comes at them now.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that you had such pain, but out of that, you've come up with some very great skills that you can share with other folks.
Thanks, Jean.
Yeah. So one of the things that you've been doing on this journey for your dental practice coaching is you are the author of a #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Passion Pursuit, How Your Passion Will Make You Prosperous. How does that relate to your experience in your dental practice?
Well, what I did was showed people how you can take what you love to do and make it into your living. Because a lot of people have these mundane day-to-day jobs, whether it's in a dental practice or outside of one. and they want to be able to pursue what they're really passionate about, and they have no idea how to transition financially, time-wise, career-wise into that new passion. And after I lost my ability to practice, I decided to sell my practice 2.5 years later. And so I opened up my dance school. A lot of people thought that I left dentistry and ran away to become a dancer. And the truth was I had danced professionally as long as I was a dentist. So it wasn't a big transition in my mindset or anything, but it was a big transition in my business because I'd let go of this beautiful practice that I'd built, wanted to pursue my dance company. And then a couple of years after I had created my dance company, then I decided to open my business doctor in order to pursue my passion in business while helping my colleagues in that. So all those tools that I used to create each of those businesses and to create all those transitions, I put into that book to help people to figure out whether it's dentistry that they want to take to the next level and become an entrepreneur in, or they want to take their passion of something else and create a business out of that. It teaches them how to do that.
Okay, that's very interesting, and having those multiple skill sets, I think, really helps to ground you, but gives you that opportunity to see things in a different perspective, and those are really important skills for an entrepreneur.
Agreed. Yep. You have to be able to wear a lot of different hats, especially in the beginning, until you kind of catch your rhythm, and then you can start bringing in other people to fill in the rest of those skills for you.
Right. Well, I know that you've got many other skills that we want to talk about, but perhaps you can help us, Angela, by helping me to understand what is a dental practice coach? What are the things that a dental practice coach would do to help a dental practice?
So, Jean, with a dental practice coach, there's sometimes people who will niche in very specific things, or some people will look at things overall. With what I do, I work on two things. So I work on production and I work on marketing. So to be able to increase a practice's production ethically, we have to really learn how to communicate better. That's the biggest thing that is missing in a lot of dental practices, because we learn in school how to look in someone's mouth, figure out what they need, tell them what they need, and then if they don't make the right decision, which is doing what we want them to do, then a lot of times we try to educate them into making the right decision. And it's not a good experience for the patients. It makes them feel shamed, it makes them uncomfortable, and a lot of times they will not get on board with that treatment. If we change that conversation, though, to find out exactly what the patient wants before we put them in the chair, find out what their priorities are, their long-term goals, what their budget is for care and their timeline, then when we go to present what we found, we can show them what they need to get done within those parameters that we talked about from what they want from us. And it's a much more comfortable conversation for one thing, but it also gets patients more on board because they're seeing things from their perspective rather than ours, where we're trying to educate them into making the right decision. So that's one of the biggest things that I try and change with practices, is really that communication part, learning how to give patients a really good listening to instead of always being the one talking. Behind the scenes with that, we have to get a lot of organization done so that we get the practice more efficient. We get the team involved in really helping to transform the practice and maximize their potential within the practice, so that the owner dentist, especially if they are still a practitioner, they can focus on spending more time with the patients, giving them the best care that they possibly can, while trying to level up everyone's skills in the practice as well. So that's the production side of it. On the marketing side of it, a lot of dentists were like me, extremely shy, didn't want to put themselves out. Like, I didn't want to put myself out there. I was the little wallflower that tried to hide when I was at parties, and a lot of dentists are like that as well. So I teach them how to comfortably get out of their comfort zone, start putting themselves out there on social media so that they can start getting recognized, help them to figure out what marketing tools will actually work to help benefit their practice, and really position themselves as the expert in what they are most passionate about, so that when a patient sees their marketing and it's time for them to come and access that skill, that person is going to be top of mind, and they're going to be the dentist that that patient wants to go and see.
Okay. So you've talked about two really important pieces. One is the production side of the business, and the other is the marketing side. And, you know, I see this time and time again in all types of healthcare providers, is that you go to school so that you can learn to be that diagnostician, the treatment plan, but the whole side of about doing the business, people tend to get lost in that. So having that coach really helps with the business side of the skills, without calling into question about their professional skills.
Absolutely. We learn to be really good technicians in school, and they have to arm us with enough tools that we come out of school ready to do as little harm to the public as possible. In 4 years, they really only can give us the basics, and the basics really have to focus on that patient care, that technical aspect, and the business side gets lost until, well, someone jumps into being an entrepreneur, and usually what happens is they start getting themselves into trouble because, again, that first year they're running on adrenaline and hope that everything is going to go exactly the way that they want, and they're in love with their entrepreneurial dream, and then they usually hit a wall. And what I often see is it's around the 12 to 18 month mark that they suddenly step back and go, oh my gosh, I have no idea what I've gotten myself into. I need help.
Okay. So 12 to 18 months, that gives you enough time to find a system and find out that it's not working the way that you expected it was going to work.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when we talk about the production, we're talking about the front office, all the things that we have about hiring staff, training staff, communicating between the practitioners and the staff. What other types of gotcha moments do you tend to see in that production side?
I tend to see a lot of the people supporting the practice to help increase that production. There's a lot of redundancies happening. There's a lot of inefficiencies happening. And what often has happened is the previous person trained the person who's there, and the person who trained them was trained by the previous person. So we see a lot of things get filtered down, and they're being done because they were told that's what needed to be done. When we look at the processes though, and the tasks that are being done in a day, we want to really see, for one thing, are they required by law? Like infection control, absolutely required by law, so we have to do that. Does it add to our production? So does it help the business to actually increase the top line? And does it actually help advance the practice? If any of the tasks that are being done don't meet those three parameters, they aren't something that should be done in the practice, even if it's the way that we've always done it. So when we actually sit down and look at what's happening in a day, oftentimes we see things that don't meet those criteria, or we see two different people doing the same thing in a day, or we see repetition of tasks throughout the day that could potentially be bundled into one period of time through the day, so you can stay in one mode like an assembly line and get that one task done in a more efficient time period rather than switching modes all day long. And that happens in the front, that happens chair side, that happens with the dentist too. And so everyone, when they actually take a look at how they're doing things, there's a lot of light bulb moments that happen where they realize, I don't need to do this, or I can do it in a much easier way and a more efficient way. Mm-hmm. And then that's how people are able to start increasing production, because you suddenly find 8 hours in the week that you didn't think you had, where you can now work on patient care instead of running around like a chicken with your head cut off.
Right. So I'm a big believer in having good processes in place and having those policies and procedures. And when you've got those policies and procedures in place, we can find the most efficient way of doing things and then make it easy for somebody to replicate and do again and again, so that you don't have somebody else micromanaging. You know what's going to be done, you know that it is being done, and you can let everybody work to the full scope of practice.
Absolutely. And the thing is, it's always uncomfortable to do these things. Change is always uncomfortable. We know this. But once you have created that change, it's hard. You don't want to go back. So getting over that hump and actually seeing that, okay, if I put in the effort right now, over the next 5 years, life is going to be so much easier. And it makes it nice for the team members too, because if they put in the effort, now they don't have someone always looking over their shoulder, because they have their list of what needs to get done in a day. The dentist knows that they're checking off what they need to get done. And so it becomes a much more pleasant and well-oiled machine to work in.
Okay. All right. So in your dental practice coaching, who would be the ideal client for you? What type of practices do you feel that you have the most impact with?
To be honest, the easiest ones to deal with are the ones where the head of the practice is ready to level up. So that can be someone who is a startup. It can be someone who has been in the practice for a while and has realized, you know, I want to start increasing my skill set so that I can deliver a more specialized type of skill set within my practice. And then there's the ones who are doing really well, but they know that they can be doing better. And so they just want to get that extra edge. And usually those are more of a marketing client than an in the practice process kind of client.
Okay. So if somebody thinks that they might be ready to level up, that they've got some problems in their practice and they want to work on that production side, what type of outcomes could they expect to see? Could you give us a couple of examples?
Usually if we start looking at the communication component, that's where we see a lot of the biggest opportunity. So there's usually about a $250,000 increase in production that you can cause just by fixing the communication part. Because once you get the patients telling you what they want and you give them the treatment plans based on that, you're going to have way higher case acceptance. And it's not about getting a whole bunch of new patients into the practice. It's actually, well, you're going to talk to them in that same way. But if you go back and talk to the patients who already are your fans, they've been there for a while, and you ask them those questions that you never asked them, you're going to discover that there's a lot of things that they would like from you, but they didn't know how to ask for them. And when you can offer those opportunities, then they are likely to get on board as well. If you combine that with a good new patient flow where you're having a great conversation about what they want, then you can level up pretty quickly on that as well.
So it certainly is a business known truth that you don't have to spend new money to get new people in the door if you can spend the time and energy to get those people who are already your clients and patients to spend more time with you, either now or in the near future.
Absolutely.
Being able to talk with and communicate with their patients, making clear about what their opportunities and expectations are, and being able to meet some needs that perhaps the patient didn't even realize that they had.
Mm-hmm. And I see a lot of people when I get into their practice, when we first had a strategy call, they said, there's no way my patients will accept the best care. And I was the same way when I bought my practice, because I was in the worst part of town. The assistants that I had were telling me, oh, those patients just fill it or extract it. That's all they want. And for the first year, I bought into that. And then in the second year, I started studying communication. And the questions I was asking my new patients, I decided that I should probably ask the existing patients those questions as well. And after I asked those questions, I started to realize that the patients didn't want to be patched up. They actually wanted that long-term care. And a lot of dentists that I speak to who are like, my patients will never accept it. Once they start asking their patients those questions, which are really easy questions, but they just get the patient talking about themselves, they start to realize that there are huge opportunities in their practice that they've been leaving on the table because they didn't ask those questions. And you always want to give the patients that best opportunity to get what they want from you. Don't prejudge them. Give them the opportunity to say, yeah, I would like that thing that'll last me 5 years instead of 6 months.
Okay. The communication side is really important. And when you're working with a practice, Angela, do you also work with the front office staff to help set the stage for clear communication with the patients?
Absolutely. The front office, well, there's a front line. So especially if you're investing in marketing, if your front line isn't ready to go with showing that the practice is different by listening better to the patients, by asking more questions on that first phone call, it's really easy for that marketing to be very expensive because it's not returning on the investment that was made into it. So the front office is really key for that first opportunity to talk to the patient. And also when the patient comes in for their appointment, they have to be ready to serve that patient at such a high level, because being good isn't good enough anymore. You have to be not only better, but you also have to do things differently to really stand out. And your front office can make or break that in this market.
Okay. So making sure that we've got patient satisfaction, being able to be responsive to the patient, and being able to measure that and identify where your areas of growth are would be an important part of that too.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay. So talk to me about marketing in a dental practice, Angela. We've got many different types of traditional local-based marketing, and now we've got a whole variety of other types of social media marketing tools. What do you think is a good mix for a dental practice?
Well, what we're seeing is that consumers are buying differently. Even over the many generations that we have in our society right now, people are buying differently. They are more likely to look online for something than walk past somewhere and go in. So you need to make sure you have a really strong online presence. Part of that is having that website. A website is a good credibility tool. The only problem with the website is it is just a snapshot at one point in time. So it can become outdated very quickly. And it also doesn't help the patient to really see what you're about, aside from the words and maybe a few videos that are on there. What we're seeing is that social media is one of the biggest opportunities that people have right now, because it is being used by a lot of practitioners, but it's not being used well. And the rules have recently changed such that we are allowed in Alberta to use our social media, to show our before and afters, to show what we can do in practice. And so there's a huge opportunity to really distinguish yourself in the market. And if you can be putting out content that, you're answering questions that a patient usually will only get answered once they've handed over some cash to have you work with them, then that is really going to set you apart. The cute little videos of people doing the floss or Friday fun day, that kind of stuff is cute, but it doesn't lend to your credibility. When you can be putting out good information, showing the quality of your work through photo and video, and really being responsive to the audience that is watching you, that is how you're going to win people over in the long run. And this is not only for trying to attract new patients, it's also for trying to attract and keep your current patients. If they see that you're this amazing person, you're putting out amazing information, you're being very generous with your information, they're going to think you're the expert that they should be seeing. And no one says, you should go to my dentist because they're mediocre. They want to tell you to go to their dentist because they think their dentist is awesome. And social media is a really dynamic way to constantly show where you're at in your practice and what you're doing to change things. Obviously, online reviews are a big part of what is happening these days too, and that is part of how our consumerism has changed. A lot of times we're doing a lot of research online. We're checking out what society is saying about a practice, a product, any kind of service that we're going to access. And so if someone sees an office that is rated, say, 5 stars versus 4.5, but the 5-star one only has 5 reviews and the 4.5 one has 200 reviews, the person who is seeing that 200 reviews one is probably going to go there because they see there's huge social credibility there because so many people have gone on and rated them decently well.
It really has changed a whole lot, the online social media. We want to make sure that we've got good credibility for our professional skills, but also just the general patient response and being able to leverage all of that information. That's a lot of work for a dental practice to do.
It is. And if they try and do it themselves, it usually is done kind of well. But having an external person come in and work with the practice, whether they're doing the posting for them or coaching them on the content that should be put out there, how to really leverage those platforms, it's becoming more and more necessary because it is hard to have someone dedicated in the practice to try and figure this out. And these days, the algorithms are changing all the time. And it's hard for team members to stay on top of those to figure out, okay, what do we need to put for hashtags? What kind of content do we need to put? What timing should we be putting it in the day in order to be able to leverage the algorithms as they change? And so having someone who's dedicated to it outside of the practice is becoming more and more essential.
And it's probably more cost efficient as well.
For sure it is.
Right. I have a VA that works in my practice, and I work on the content that I want to be able to distribute in social media. But my VA is much faster, and she's more in tune with the trends to know what I should be doing about my Facebook page and having a business page for LinkedIn. I provide her the content, and she makes sure it gets plugged into the right places.
Absolutely. What I see often is they pick one of the youngest staff members and they're like, well, they post a lot on social media, so they must know how to do this. And so they get them trying to run with that. But there's things happening like audience building that has to happen. There has to be content building. There has to be proper positioning against really your competition, because you're competing for eyes on these social media platforms too. So it is an art and a science that has to be constantly adjusted based on what is happening in that month with the social media platform.
Right. So providing good information about your dental practice, and when you're providing that information content, you really want to talk to that ideal patient that you want in your practice, whether it is implants or dental care or preventative care. So the more content that you can create, and that would be the direction of that professional in the dental practice, to be able to create the content and then being able to delegate with providing some experience to your front office staff or the contractor that you're working with, to be able to get it out there to make sure that it's delivering what you need.
Exactly. And a lot of times dentists still go into that education mode, educate them into making the right decision mode. And any content that you're putting out there, if it feels like you're just overwhelming them with scientific and technical information, it's not necessarily going to get people engaged with it. You have to get down to your audience's level. You have to talk from their perspective, not your perspective, because really, if you want to gain more following, more views and everything else, you need to actually look at what your audience, how they're responding to what you're putting out there, and keep adjusting to that, instead of just going, well, this is how I would perceive it. This is how I would like to have the information delivered. And you can't do that. It really is all about how your audience responds and making sure that you're staying responsive and growing in the way that they want that information delivered to them.
Angela, it sounds like we're still communicating and learning how to listen to our patients in a different way.
We totally are. Thank you.
Okay. So Angela, you've shared with us some information about both the dental practice coaching and the marketing. Do you find are the two most common motivations for a dental practice provider to contact you to find out more about dental practice coaching?
Usually they ask, how can I make more money? And how can I get more new patients? So the production part and the marketing part are usually what gets dentists interested in trying to get themselves some help. And then there's all the stuff behind the scenes that we kind of sneak into making them learn as they try and increase their production or they try and increase their new patients. And when they access that information, then they start to really see that if you create a good foundation, you can make those two things, the production and the new patients, really start to increase very quickly.
Okay. So if people want to find out more from you and find out if they're a good fit for dental practice coaching, if you can help them, how can they do that?
I'm always happy to offer a free 1-hour strategy call, whether you're an associate, an owner, a hygienist, independent practitioner. I'm happy to give you an hour of my time where we can go pretty deep into what is happening with your career, with your practice, and I will give you a bunch of tips and tools that you can go and run with right away after you get off the call. And then if you decide that we want to work together, we can absolutely do that. And you can set that up through my assistant, Christina, at info@helpgetmepatientsnow.com.
Okay. info@helpgetmepatients.com.
Patientsnow.com.
Patientsnow.com. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. And you've been doing a lot of work on preparing a book about marketing. Tell me a bit about that.
Yes, so I actually just handed in my first full-length draft, which is 44,000 words, to my editors. And so now we're in the editing and breaking it down and reorganizing the whole thing. And the content of it is about credible influencer marketing for professionals. So how to use those social media platforms like we talked about for professionals to increase their business and also increase their expert status.
Okay. Looking forward to hearing more about that. You and I connected on LinkedIn, so that's one of those marketing platforms. And I'm delighted that you've been able to share with us about information about dental practice coaching and marketing for a dental practice.
Thanks for having me, Jean. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Angela. I know that we're going to keep in touch and we'll find out more leveraging of marketing and assisting professionals that we can do together. Did you hear something on today's podcast that you would like to go back and listen to again? Or maybe you heard something on one of our previous podcasts, but you don't remember which one and you'd like to be able to find it quickly and easily. Well, that's easy to do now. If you heard something on this podcast that you want to revisit, go to practicemanagementnuggets.live/search and enter the keyword in the magic box. You will be brought back to the podcast at the exact spot where we talked about it. This video keyword search tool uses the new Searchy app. If you would like to know more about this, visit informationmanagers.ca/likes-searchy. That's SEARCHIE. I'm excited about this new season, and I'd so appreciate your help to spread the word with your colleagues. First, make sure that you subscribe and add a review on whatever podcast platform that you use. Next, take a screenshot of this episode that you're listening to right now and share it on your Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, or your preferred social media channel. Remember to tag me and I will reshare your post. When you share the show, it makes it easier for people just like you and who like what you like to find the show. Until next time, this is Jean Eaton, your practice management mentor and your practical privacy coach.